When I lived in England many years ago, there was a program on British television. Was exactly that. The British were accusing Americans, especially Hollywood, for having invented and inspired serial killers, and that the serial killer phenomenon that was happening in England, as in everywhere, was somehow Hollywood inspired. And a professor from Oxford and Cambridge came on, and he reminded the English of Jack the Ripper. That Jack the Ripper was an English thing, okay? And his point was that there's always been serial killers. There's always been people who want to do horrible violence, but there always hasn't been freeways. That in past centuries, people lived in small communities. And a potential serial killer, before they ever get to kill a person, would start, as they often do in childhood, mutilating animals, and they'd be caught for that and punished for that and stopped in their tracks. And so it was because you couldn't be hidden, you couldn't be mobile, serial killers had a difficult time. Jack the Ripper used to, in fog-ridden London, go down to the maze and the labyrinth of the wharfs on the riverside of London, and kill prostitutes in the dense pea-soup fog, and he could get away with it, and he did. Nobody ever knows who, in fact, Jack the Ripper was. And so the point is, there's always been violence. There's always been people who want to do exceeding violence and do it repeatedly. Hollywood didn't invent the serial killer. But the more important question that you're asking there is does the artist, filmmakers in this case, but artists in general, do artists create a culture or even inspire grotesqueries in culture like serial killers, or does culture inspire artists to create and express? It's a chicken and egg question. Do artists create culture, or does culture create artists? And in my point of view, culture creates artists. In my point of view, Hollywood, the publishing industry, Broadway, the West End, the theater, stage, page, and screen are always 10 years out of date. That there are titanic forces in society, economic forces, cultural forces of all kinds, that are moving deeply and powerfully in society, and they're really not in our control. They are just responding to one another in a dialectic of forces, positive and negative, pushing and pulling the classes, country against country, the environment against consumption of natural resources. There are these powerful forces going on in society. Artists are like antennae in the world, and they can sense around them the way things are going, the way human beings are now relating to one another, the birth of romance, the death of romance, these great movements. Artists then sense these things, and out of their immersion in life and their sensitivity to life, they then begin to create and ultimately produce novels, produce plays, and then these novels have to get published, and that can take some time. Plays have to find money and get produced. Movies and television, it's the same thing. It takes years to go from a script to the screen, or from a novel to the bookstores. And so from the time that the phenomenon is actually occurring deeply in society, artists are coming to understand it, and their works finally reach the world as at least a decade. And that artists are always 10 years out of date. And so it's the case that culture leads the artists to express their culture. Now, it's possible that works of art, very important works of art, then make it clear to the audience what has been going on in culture, and suddenly they realize what has been in the subtext of their lives now for years, and as that realization becomes clear, it reinforces the cultural change, or may move it or push it a little bit. And so certainly it's not as if art doesn't have influence, but the source of art is culture. The changing dynamics in society. It's not the other way around. Artists express what they experience. They first have to experience it, then they express it. And so what artists are expressing really is what's been going on in society for quite some time. And then, as I said, their works may have influence to reinforce that and refine that, develop that in certain ways, but they don't start it, they express it.